Good morning, everybody. Having obviously a few little technical issues this morning, so we kind of readjusted, and it's going to be a little different this morning. But I think we've got the important thing showing right now, which is the screen. And so, if you're hopefully you're still on, and we're going to talk about some check-ins areas this morning at some churches, and really with the goal of how do we create that great first impression for first-time visitors in particular. And so my name is Kevin. I'm the creative director at Worlds of Wow. Ideally, you'd be able to see my face, and also would have my friend Todd on here as well. But again, technical issues, and so we're readjusting, and I'm going to share my screen and go through some things. So let me jump in here. All right. So one of our listeners they actually sent in some pictures of their space. This is Debbie at Park Avenue Baptist Church. They are moving their kids area into their gym space, and so this lobby space they actually need to make it a welcoming place for first time families. And so I thought I'd use this as an example, and then maybe talk through some do's and some don'ts of creating a compelling first time check-in for any of your visitors. So thank you, Debbie and friends. So I got this picture, and then I went and I actually made a plan view, because having a plan view is an important part of mapping things out as well. I made a few assumptions, so some things might be off, but overall, I think this is the layout of the space. And so we have the entry down here. We have the entry to the large group room up here. And you can see right now they have this giant, bulky check-in desk. And just looking at this picture, my assumption is that maybe they were kind of mid-move when everything happened with COVID. So this may not be what it actually looks like, and probably not what they would want it to look like long term. But I think overall, this is kind of what I see a lot with different spaces, and I would call something like this a hodgepodge of good intentions. And what I mean by that is, there's a lot of different things in here, and so at some point in the past, somebody made the decision to put up a cork board over here. Probably a great idea, functional purpose to put up some announcements, which would be super helpful. At some point, somebody put a sign over here. This giant desk was put in here, vending machine right here. Some of these elements, which looks like they're kind of shoved to the side right now, but I would imagine they're inhabiting the space as well. And so all of these different elements, these are probably, it looks like to me, and kind of what we experience a lot of good intentions over the years of people kind of putting stuff in the space to try and make it more fun for the kids, to try and solve a functional issue. But the overall result is kind of what you see here, which is a space that lacks impact and feels a little bit cluttered and just kind of all over the place, right? So what I like to do a lot of times is I actually went through and I kind of cleaned it up to give us a blank canvas, right? So painted out the desk and all the hodgepodge of different stuff in the space. We have a blank canvas right here. Now, I think if you're looking at doing something for your kid space, one of the things that people typically start with is they think kids, so they think color, right? And then they see a bunch of walls, they see 4 walls and all the different architectural accents, and they're like, man, that's an opportunity for all kinds of color. I'm going to show you kind of what we see a lot, and maybe wouldn't be the right way to go about this. But this is kind of what we see quite a bit. Let me put this real fast. And so I think this would be an example of what not to do, right? And if I'm looking at this through the lens of a first-time family, while it may kind of right off the bat communicate kids, just because it's bright, primary, in-your-face colors, it also communicates a lot of chaos. Maybe it communicates Chuck E. Cheese. Maybe it communicates just young kids, right? And so I think we're a big fan of Worlds of Wow of elevating the kids space, and we're just firm believers that you could have a a level of sophistication, and you could make it a little more upscale, but still make it a whole lot more fun and a whole lot more relevant and engaging for your existing families and new time families. So I just want to kind of start with this, as this is be an example of something we see a lot is everything in the room is an opportunity to add color, and this would be an example of what not to do. So kind of going back to just the cleaned up space. Actually, I pulled up here. I kind of went through and right off the bat, kind of built a quick little color palette. And you can kind of see here, kind of have some of the, the blues and the greens, and then even introduced a texture, a wood texture, right? A wood finish. But you can kind of see this is more of a teal. This is more of a muted sort of blue and just kind of a lighter lime green, right? So again, just kind of create more of an upscale look. The first thing I might do with this space is I actually might lighten it up a little bit, right? So I have my lighter sort of base coat there. So you can kind of see even the difference right there. I mean, the ceilings, it's not, I mean, it's about 9 feet, right? But it's a little bit of a compact space. And so, lightening up the walls a little bit is just going to open up that space a little bit and just right off the bat, make it a little more inviting. And I think just work a little better, with some of the colors we are going to throw on there. If you're just joining us right now, my name is Kevin at Worlds of Wow. I'm the creative director at Worlds of Wow, and we are talking about check-in spaces for your kids area. We're actually going through Park Avenue Baptist Church new lobby space and just kind of map out what a check-in space for their new area could look like. I'm going to throw in some colors. That's always a great place to start. Even some intentional color right off the bat can change a lot of things. And you'll see I am going to throw some colors, but I'm going to still allow the room to breathe, right? Like I'm going to let that base coat, that light gray, kind of speak for itself and dictate a lot of what's going on in the room without going overboard. Just give me 1 second. Do this. All right. So you can see right here, let me turn that back on. All right. So you can see right here, just putting some color in some very intentional spaces. And so kind of creating this as a focal wall. I'm actually kind of already looking at that as kind of the new family check-in area. So I'm want that to stand out for sure. Right. And then using the teal accents just around the room. So this wall right here is a great opportunity to do some color on, just because assuming people walk in right across or here, that's the first thing they're going to see, right? So a pop of color is never a bad thing opposite the entry where people are going to come in at. And then a lot of times, we're talking to clients and they get frustrated by some of these kind of overhangs or these soffits or even some pipes or, if the building's a little older, just some more of the interesting architectural accents that somebody came up with a long time ago. Sometimes it's a good idea to get rid of those, make the wall flush, and I'm always a big fan of embracing those a little bit. And so this, for example, right here, they just have a little bit of an overhang. And so instead of putting color on this whole wall, again, staying away from color everywhere, I'm going to use that accent to just pull the color around the room and just have a little fun with it. That's almost kind of the bridge between the teal wall here and the teal wall here. It's got that little strip right there, right? So again, any of those accents, those are great opportunities sometimes to add those pops of color. So you can kind of see right here, the big thing is letting the room breathe. Again, just because it's for kids doesn't mean that it has to be color everywhere. It doesn't have to be a little obnoxious, doesn't have to be crazy, right? It can have that level of sophistication. And so just by letting the room breathe with some lighter base coats, already this room is kind of elevated itself a little bit. So just to kind of go back to where we were to where we are, you can kind of see the improvement right there. Now, one of the big things, well, a few things, talking through a check-in space before, you start throwing stuff on the walls and just putting stuff in the room. There's a few things to definitely think through before we get too far into it. The first thing is the purpose of the space. Obviously, this is a check-in, right? So it serves a very functional purpose. Need to get kiddos checked in so mom and dad can get them to their classrooms and go be present in their in the adult sanctuary, right? But this is a great opportunity. Check-ins especially is a great opportunity to communicate your brand or communicate your story, right? And so taking it beyond just what you think maybe looks cool, and this would maybe help sometimes there's some internal conversations or disagreements about which direction to go, but backing up a little bit and starting with looking at who you are as a church, looking at your history, looking at your story, your vision, your leadership's vision for the community and the church, the people in your community. Those are great benchmarks to build your space around, right? So all of a sudden you go from somebody thinks this looks cool, or somebody pulled a board off of Pinterest and thinks this looks cool. And you can have a more informed conversation just around the idea of the goal isn't just to make something cool. The goal is to communicate your story to families and to kiddos and ultimately connect them to Jesus. So that's step number one. Step number two, there's a few things. It's clear signage. Based off of personal experience, I am a big believer in if somebody new to your church can walk in and understand how to get from point A to point B, point C without talking to anybody, then you've done something right, right? Because there's a lot of anxiety when you step into a new building, especially if it's a little bit of a crowded building. And so having clear signage that allows families to kind of understand where they need to start and where they need to go is a good thing for your space. And that's something that we do quite a bit at Worlds of Wow. It's not just, again, the cool stuff. It's an opportunity to serve a very functional purpose as well. So that kind of tagging along with it, traffic flow is a big deal. And we'll kind of look at the plan in a little bit, but traffic flow post-COVID, right? As we start to think about opening up, as we start to think about what it's going to look like to do life together in spaces, not quarantine away from each other, traffic flow is going to be a big deal. And so just looking at this check-in space, again, if I'm assuming this is the entry point and this is how you get into the large group room, I need to understand how the people are going to move through the space and kind of interact with each other, right? Even before COVID and all that stuff that we have to start thinking through, we work with a lot of clients, and typically, again, it might be good intentions, but placing your check-in spaces in certain areas can either lead to a pleasant, engaging experience, or it could create traffic jams and a little bit of frustration, right? So that's something really to kind of think through. Again, if you're joining us, my name is Kevin. I'm the creative director at Worlds of Wow, and we are talking check-in spaces at churches. We're actually, Debbie and her team at Park Avenue Baptist Church were kind enough to send in some pictures of their space, and they're looking for ideas. And so we're jumping in and kind of talking about what we could do with the space. So if I'm looking at this plan view, I'm going to start, let me say there's typically two things to think about when you're looking at check-in. One is self-check-in, and the other is visitor check-in. And you might, some churches have all the check-in just in one space, and sometimes just based off the layout of the space or the size of the space, that's just has to be what it has to be. But ideally, we find it's a great thing to separate these two out. And I'll tell you, for self-check-in, at my church, I know the best entrance to go to with the least amount of traffic. I know kind of the quickest way to park and get in and get my kiddo checked in and get to church, right? And so I don't need as much of attention on a day-to-day basis or on a Sunday morning as a first-time visitor. And so thinking about that, we'll kind of look at some things on that. That allows you to create an intentional space focused on the first time visitor. And so if I'm looking over here, and I think maybe there's a few ideas of what we could do, but just thinking through traffic flow, if I'm gonna say maybe we put a visitor check-in right here. And then something we do a lot is we actually do mobile kiosks for visitor check-in or self check-in for regular attenders. The great thing about that is, we think maybe this is the best layout right here. This is the best way to go. But as you're kind of working through your Sunday mornings, for some reason, there's just this traffic jam that usually happens right here. So with mobile kiosks for those regular attenders, we have the option to kind of play around with the layout and adjust the traffic flow just from week to week if we need to. But for right now, I'm going to leave those kiosks right there. So I'm going to call this visitor check-in. I'm going to call this self check-in. And really the idea for me would be, assuming again, we're going to exit through this space, this would be a good opportunity for people to kind of come in, go to the left, and then go to the right to drop those kiddos off and really kind of have a pathway back out of the space without having to kind of rub shoulders as, going back and forth with each other. So that's a little bit of the thought behind that, and definitely something, again, post-COVID, that we want to be thinking through as churches to serve our families well. So let's see. So we have that. So I'm going to jump in, and I don't know a lot about Park Avenue Baptist Church. I'm guessing they're great people, and I think they have a big heart for kiddos. But ideally, I'd want to understand who they are so we can kind of build the story and build the look around that. But I'm just going to assume that they want to breathe a little life into their kids' space. They want a space that communicates high energy. So let's just say they're a high energy church. Their kids ministry is a high energy ministry. So I want to start building in some items that that are going to help communicate that this is a place for kiddos to have fun and really probably a safe place for them to get a little crazy. So again, I have my color palette. This right here, and I think some churches right off the bat, man, you don't have a budget, right? And so a lot of times churches asking us, what can they do? Something like this right here, just a fresh coat of paint. And again, really thinking through and being intentional of where you put that paint and the colors of the paint is a great way to just even elevate the room right off the bat without doing a whole lot. So again, going back to this being a space that's, let's see, that wants to communicate some high energy, I'm gonna do some things. While I'm doing them, again, my name is Kevin. I'm a creative director at Worlds of Wow, and we are talking check-in spaces at churches. And this one, I'm going to not doing a literal theme, right? So we're not making this a jungle adventure or an underwater adventure sort of thing. We're gonna stick to more kind of interior design, but kid-friendly interior design. We certainly do more immersive environments, something, man, we're great at. We still do quite a bit of those. It's really, I'll tell you, I hear from some other companies sometimes or from architectural firms, I think there's a lot of wisdom there on what's trending and what you should do and not do. But I'll tell you, whether it's interior design or more of an immersive environment with an underwater adventure, or jungle adventure, or something like that. I think the most important thing is again understanding who you are, and then building a theme around that. And so sometimes an immersive environment, underwater adventure may help communicate your story better than just something with some nice finishes and some intentionally placed colors. But that's all part of the discovery process and something we do at Worlds of Wow quite a bit. So you can kind of see right here, I'm just having some fun with the texture or this finish right here, this wood finish. And really my goal is, knowing they want to be a little high energy, I'm going to start doing some things that aren't horizontal or vertical, right? Just doing an angle here adds a little action, a little bit of energy. Just knowing I want to identify this space as the new family check-in. Whether you call it new family check-in, visitor check-in, that's up to you. I think sometimes churches stress about that. But I think just as long as it's clear, man, if you're new here, this is where you need to start, and we just want to spend some time loving on you and get you checked in. Then you've done what you're supposed to do. So I'm gonna throw some verbiage together. Do this real fast. You might hear my son in the background. I think he's playing Fortnite while I'm on this call, so he might get a little excited. But all right, so we have this right here, right? So I haven't talked about any of the kiosks yet or the check-in desk, but right now we've identified this space as the new family check-in. I'm gonna keep playing around with this a little bit, and I want to kind of get that energy for the space happening. See, I might just want to keep playing with those stripes, and this may all be a disaster. I don't know, but just kind of want to play around with this a little bit and see if we can't get something that communicates high energy. All right, so I'm gonna make that. So that might be have a little bit of a depth to it. So like an inch, even a half an inch, right? But really kind of separates those two parts of the wall. And doing that sometimes, I'm just gonna keep building on this. That would actually allow me to have a little fun with the color a little bit. And again, just taking it off of just this wall is this color, that wall is this color. Now we've done something where this wall is several colors, and have something that's working to break it up. Do this. All right. I think, Debbie and your team, I think there's a little bit of an inset or something. I couldn't quite tell from the pictures, but that's kind of, I put that drop shadow there. Okay. So again, assuming that's the large group room and knowing, again, we want clear signage that people can know where to go, I'm going to do this. And fonts is a whole other ball game, right? And this is something that you should definitely spend a little bit of time on, really working to understand and even getting some advice. And if you have anybody in-house, on the media team, they might be a good resource for you to talk to. But again, with kids, a lot of times the assumption is, let's, when it comes to the type, let's do Dr. Seuss or let's do some other crazy font that's just wacky and wonky and kind of all over the place. Again, sometimes for the right theme, we did a Toontown not too long ago. That's the right font for a space like that. But for something like this, where we wanted it's almost a refresh for the space. We want to communicate that high energy. This is actually one of my new favorite fonts, Go Bold. So you can just have a lot of fun with that as well. And so again, if you see, I didn't have to use Dr. Seuss kind of font. I didn't have to use anything wonky or swirly or anything to communicate that this is a space for kids. I'm gonna, I think even with the finish and the colors, man, you got something good. But where we excel too is some of those vinyl graphics on the wall or some paint on the walls, and this may be some of these walls may be a good opportunity for something like that. I'm gonna just do something simple right here and see what happens. Just give me 1 second. Get around with this. Let's see, again with the goal of a little more energy, a little more action. Really, I think what we're starting to see too is you can kind of see just all these angles and just everything that's going on. I think something I'm liking is everything is driving the eye towards the large group room, which is, where we want the ultimate destination to be. So I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back for that. This may, we may need to back out a few things, but I just want to keep playing with it for a little bit. All right. All right, I'm gonna do something. Oop, nope. All right, I'm kind of liking that, right? So again, if you're looking at it, I think one of the things I am kind of liking about this right now, whether this ends up being the final look for the space or not, is this is the ultimate destination, right? And so kind of if you remember where we started, where is this? And your eye is kind of like, well, there's something over here, there's something over here. Oh, there's a ginormous desk right here. There's all this stuff. And now just get intentional with even the theming and the look we're developing. Everything is driving towards that door right here, which is the ultimate destination, right? So one, you've already helped the first-time visitor walking in to allow them to focus on a space, which helps create that great first-time impression. Two, just even with the look of the space, you're helping them understand where they need to go. So I am liking this so far. Man, I wish we could see any of if there's any questions coming through. But for sure, feel free after this to follow up with us at todd.parks@worldsofwow.com. That's todd.parks, Parks, at worldsofwow.com. And, would love to chat with you just about some ideas for the space. But again, fortunately, I can't see any of the comments right now. So, all right, so we need the actual check-in space, right? We need check-in stations. So for the visitor check-in, I'm going to do something a little slimmer than the original, right? If you look at this right here, whoa, big, bulky, kind of uninviting, puts this giant barrier between new families and the person behind the desk. And really, man, it's eating up a whole lot of real estate in this decent sized room, but it's eating up a nice chunk of the space unnecessarily. So I'm gonna go a little slim here. And so let me do this real fast. Just have some fun with the desk. And attempt to make myself a little desk here real fast. See how it goes. All right. Many designers maybe, whoa, he uses Photoshop in a weird sort of way. It'd be a whole lot easier to do this in 3D. And you're probably right, but this is the way I was trained. And so it's kind of one of those things I can fly through it pretty quick. But we have a whole team of artists and designers who any program we need, man, they're able to jump in and do it right and do it well. All right. So while I'm finishing out this desk, let me, my name is Kevin Cravens, Creative Director at Worlds of Wow. And today we are talking check-in spaces for churches. We're actually, Debbie and her team at Park Avenue Baptist Church were nice enough to send us a pic of their space. They're going to need to be doing some new work, and they were asking about some ideas. And so kind of using this to talk through, maybe come up with a great look for the space, but whether it's the look they want or not, really kind of talk through some of the more of the design principles of creating that welcoming and engaging first-time guest experience. I got my desk right there. So you can already see, again, let me do this. So we kind of went slim, right? We opened up a lot of the room. Again, traffic flow is going to be a big deal. This makes the assumption that maybe we would move more towards some iPad check-in stations. Maybe this real fast. Whether you have one or you have two, I mean, that's up to you. But I think something we found for sure is when you do make an investment in your kid's space, you should expect growth, and so it's always good to plan um, for an influx of visitors over time. All right, so I'm gonna leave that as is. So typically you're gonna have your check-in monitor, right? It's gonna be touchscreen a lot. Something I've seen recently, which I really like, is, and this helps to allow sometimes the desk to stay a little slimmer, is building a little bit of an inset on. Oh, let me do this on the face of the desk. Oh, oh, oh. All right, wheels off there for a second. Do this. I'm going to inset this a little bit. Oh, come on. There we go. So something like this would allow you to put the printers, right? Typically your kiddo's going to check in, sometimes with the key fob things nowadays, but a lot of times, you're going to check in and then it's going to print something off for you. And so building this little inset into the desk is a great opportunity sometimes to allow the desk to stay slim, and then really kind of take some of the clutter off the desk, right? So you have the monitors up top and then the printers down low. Do this. We got a little overlap right here. All right. Well, I don't know. We were a little late getting started this morning. Had some technical issues. Had to adjust. I can't see. I hope there's people on the call. And if you're on, yeah, hope you're getting some out of it. And would love to hear from you guys after this. Would love to talk more ideas with you about your space in particular. All right. So we got our desk right here. Now, I think I see a lot sometimes with desks too, is like, oh, there's a desk, it's a check-in desk. This would be a great place to put like check-in, right? Or maybe, yeah, check-in across the face of it. And a lot of times, yeah, it looks good. And it's a great way to kind of to add something to the desk a little bit. But it looks good right now with an empty space. But if you can, if I turn this off, and then let's just say, because I don't want to embarrass myself trying to draw out people. Let's just say these these white stripes are people, right? People entering the space. Now you can see all of a sudden, that great check-in signage on the desk doesn't work, and it's kind of a failure, right? So we are always fans of how do we get this up here, raise up that signage, right? Just so that when you do have the space full of people, it's still clear where you need to go, right? So sometimes it's signage up high, sometimes it's coming perpendicular off the wall, sometimes it's straight to the wall. But again, it's kind of thinking through that traffic flow, and again, just knowing somebody is going to naturally look up, making sure something's there that's easy for them to see and understand where they need to go. So I'm going to attempt to do this real fast. I'll make some of my kiosks. Let's see. These kiosk stations, and again, these could be mobile. These could be ideally a little slim, but mobile I think is typically a great thing. Because again, we're thinking regular attenders, they're going to be able to know where to go. They just want to get their kiddos checked in and get to their space. And so that's a great way to serve them and serve them well. then really kind of leave the space open for new families. All right. So these are desks that, again, it's without getting too much into the look of it. I think there's some opportunities to really kind of continue to dress this up. I'm gonna do a little bit right here, right now, just even adding a little bit to the kiosk. That'd be a great way to do some of that. All right. All right. So there we go. Let's see. So I think the one thing we don't have in this space is any sort of branding, and I would assume, and maybe Park Avenue Baptist Church, if you don't have any branding, that would be a great opportunity, just as you're redoing your space, to really think through that and talk about the logo and colors and shapes and everything else. But just for the sake of the time here, I am going to just say Park Avenue Kids. I'm just going to make something big here. I'm going to use one of my other favorite fonts, which is Futura. So it just has a lot of options between thin and thick. Ew. All right. And if you're just joining us, we are actually wrapping up a redone space. So you should stick on for a little bit. I'll show you what it was and then how we got to here, and you can kind of see the transformation and wrap it up with a few principles of the why behind some of this. I'm going to, and again, I would hope with the branding, maybe it's a little more fun. Maybe it is kind of encapsulate who you guys are more than just Park Avenue Kids written really big. But just for the sake of time and just some, getting some branding on the walls, I'm going to, I was going to play with maybe it's kind of angled. I mean, that's something we could play with for sure. But for right now, I'm just going to put it really big on the wall here. All right. And then something that comes up quite a bit. Well, let me do this real fast. I'm going to talk about floors and ceilings, and I think we could wrap it up. But all right. So yeah, if you're just joining us, this is where we've ended up. This is where we started. And so it's kind of a cluttered room. Probably stuff was shoved there. I understand things happen with COVID going on, and just kind of having space or stuff stored for right now. But we have a little bit of a cluttered space, a little bit of stuff all over the place, and again, what I would call a hodgepodge of good intentions. And this is where we got. And so this was thinking through their brand, thinking through what they want to communicate, and just really coming up with a quick idea of how we could communicate their story and who they are. Traffic flow, clear signage, separating out the check-in for new family check-ins and regular attendant check-ins are all things to really think through to make an engaging first-time visitor experience for the kids area at your church. But yeah, something that comes up every once in a while is, what can we do with the flooring? And the answer is quite a bit, right? And sometimes what I've seen is, again, it's kind of what we talked about at the very beginning with, throwing colors on every wall, and just the idea that, well, it's kids, so yeah, color everywhere. A lot of times you'll see this with floors and maybe some older buildings where, they might have a white VCT floor like this, and they're going to throw in like just a bunch of random, colors. They might put I don't know, a swoosh somewhere. Again, kids love swooshes, so why not, right? The problem with kind of this approach, and you've kind of seen it, I'm sure, in the past, is, again, it doesn't help the space. It just, again, we're back to the space looking a little confusing. Doesn't help our eye focus anywhere. It just seems really kind of all over the place, right? So something we're a big fan of is the space. The floor could serve a functional purpose as well, right? So again, if I want to draw people to the left and then I'm moving my hands around like you can see me. But if I want to guide people to the left and then guide them to the right, might just do something as simple as this, right? You can keep that floor kind of that light VCT, and maybe whether it's a color, I mean, we can kind of see maybe what the, oh, that's kind of cool. I like that. So you can kind of see right here. What does this do? Somebody's walking in. That only the flooring now is a part of helping us communicate the families where they need to go and where they need to start, and actually where they need to end up, right? And then what I'm a big fan of is, yeah, anytime you can take the theming or the look and feel off the walls and onto the floor or onto the ceiling, that's and done well and done in an intentional sort of way. That's a great way to kind of up the sophistication of the space, but still be playful and have some fun with it, right? So you can kind of see right here, like this blue. We've taken it kind of off that wall, the portion of the wall, and put it onto the floor. And then we kind of did the same thing with the green, right? So now we've taken this room that just had basically 4 walls. Now we're playing with the shapes and playing with the setup and really creating a space that has a little bit of energy to it. So I think that is all I have for today. Just a few things to wrap up, and then we'll get going, and hopefully we'll be back next week with Todd and myself. I like having Todd with me. He has a lot of great insights as well. But again, I think kind of this is our 3rd Facebook Live, and a lot of what we've been focusing on is not so much what's the trend or what's that look that we need. What we're trying to bid focus on is we want you to understand who you are. So whether you're a family at home or whether you're a church, it would be good for you to understand who you are and spend some time doing that. And I mean, we would love to talk to you some more about that. That's a big part of our process before we jump in the drawing or coming up with ideas. We have a system and a process set up to really help you think through who you are. And then let that inform the look and the feel that we come up with for your space. And so, it might be immersive, it might be more interior design, it might be a kids museum, it might be highly interactive, it might incorporate technology. But we want to make sure if we're going to do all that stuff that it helps communicate your story. So again, my name is Kevin, creative director at Worlds of Wow. I hope this was informative. Please, please, please follow up with us. I would love to hear with you and talk with you some more. If not, wish blessings upon you and your church family as you all do the hard work of opening back up and figuring things out. And at the very least, we're going to be praying for you. But we would love to talk to you some more about creating a playful world for your kids area at your church.